so animated. So today we're going to be talking about how to be a writer's PA. So what is a writer's PA? It's a writer's production assistant. It's someone who helps out in the writer's room and helps the writers specifically and the showrunner with anything that they need around the office. It's an entry-level job into the industry, and it's the first step to getting noticed by writers. So what are the things that a writer's PA does? Simply put, a writer's PA does any and everything that the writers or the showrunner needs. So that's anything from getting coffee to getting lunch to getting dinner for both the writers and the showrunner. Doing any type of office errands. For example, if you need to go to the post office or anything needs to be printed. A lot of times the writer's PA is responsible for opening up and closing the office. They're responsible for making copies of scripts when the writers need them. If the printer is broken, if copies need to be made, they are the ones who do that, or they call somebody who can get it fixed. Another big thing is they make sure that the office is stocked. So when I say stocked, I mean office supplies are stocked. The writer's room is stocked with any type of essentials that they need: pens, paper, whiteboards, index cards. So they also make sure that the kitchen and the pantries are stocked. So this means anything from getting sodas to making sure that there are snacks to making sure that there's juices and coffees there. Just basically making the writer's room a really livable and comfortable space for the writers to be in. So any type of purchases that happen with production, whether it be buying snacks or buying groceries, making copies at FedEx, or paying for something to be shipped, all of those have to be reconciled with the actual production company. And many times that means it's up to the PA to make sure that that gets handled in a timely manner. A lot of times too, that means doing a lot of runs. So the showrunner might need you to pick up something from their house and drop something off, or pick something up from the office and take it to another company, take a script from one writer to another writer. Writers might ask you to do something. A lot of times the writer's PA is there to assist the writers and the showrunners with whatever they need. A lot of times people want to know, well, does it get me closer or into the writer's room? And sometimes it does, but I will say the most important thing is to make sure as a writer's PA that you stand out for doing a good job at that job. So as a writer's PA, you have a great opportunity to show your work ethic. You have a great opportunity to go above and beyond. So for example, if your main role, which as writer's PA, your main role is getting lunch, right? If that's your main job, make sure you get the lunches on time. Make sure you set it up. Like, make sure all the condiments are there. Make sure all of the juices are there. Give writers options. Like, go above and beyond. Set up a whole spread. You know what I mean? Like, just make sure that you are taking all the small things into account. It's not just, oh, I'm grabbing lunch for the writers. Own whatever your job is. What things should you do and what things should you not do? Do not forget writers' lunches. Do not mess up coffee orders. You know, these are really small things. And even though it's an entry-level job, I think a lot of times writers' PAs look at it like, oh, this is so easy, and this is something that, like, I don't even necessarily want to be doing this grunt work. But realistically, that is the job, and it's your responsibility to do that job well. The writers should not have to ask for anything. So most writers have their thing. They have their snacks, they have their juices, they have their coffees, they have their thing that's really specific to them. If it's medicines, if it's teas that they like, keep those things in the forefront of your mind and always be restocking them. You have small opportunities to go above and beyond, and this is how you can get noticed in the writer's room. As a writer, you're in a writer's room all day with 8 to 12 other people. You want to make this space feel like home for the writers. So maybe you light some candles. I don't know what your thing is, like whatever your zen is, like just make the space warm and welcome. And little things like that help the writers see that you will go above and beyond. And you can handle not just the basic things that need to be done, but you can be trusted to maybe think about some other things or do some other things, like write on my show. Be on top of your shit. Like, you have a great opportunity to really talk to the writers and really get to know them. Another thing, As a writer's PA, there's going to be a lot of like writer functions, group functions where you're going out with the writers and maybe you guys are getting drinks after somebody, finished a script or the writers broke a story or whatever the thing is. But it's important that even as a writer's PA, you're the entry-level assistant. Bring your personality and get to know the writers, but don't throw yourself into the conversation. Don't overexert yourself. Even if you have a strong personality, which is, if you have a strong personality, that's great. Do not lose that. That is like your key to life. But ease yourself in. Talk to them about things they're interested in, but don't bombard them with your life or bombard them with your stories. Sometimes that could be a little much for some. Okay, so what are some of the pros and cons of being a writer's PA? Definite pros are you have so much time to write. Your prime responsibilities are coffee orders, lunch orders, dinner orders if need be. Aside from that, you have a lot of time during the day when, if you're not in the writer's room, you can work on your own personal projects. You can get a lot of writing done. You can read a lot of scripts in the meantime. You can maybe even watch some movies, whatever. Like, you can work on your own craft. And that is one of the great things about being a writer's PA. You're getting paid to work in a writer's room, but also getting paid to work on your own stuff. Another great pro is you have access to amazing writers. I mean, when I was a writer's PA, I read a lot of scripts. I read a lot of their outlines. I read the notes every day that the writer's assistant would take in the room. And I just immersed myself in the show itself. And I loved reading the writers. I mean, they were brilliant. Like, they really were brilliant. So it's like you have so much time to really understand the show and to kind of like get to understand the inner workings from the ground up. And overall, it's a great opportunity to get your foot in the door. So some of the cons about being a writer's PA, right? It's a 12-hour day. It's a long day. Like, you're typically the one opening up the office maybe at 8 a.m., 8:30 a.m., 9 a.m., depending on when the writer's room starts. And typically a writer's room starts between 9:30 and 10 a.m. You're making sure everything is organized. You're making sure the office is clean. Like, everything is where it needs to be. And then often you're the last to leave. So you are the one, after the writer's break at, let's say, 5 or 6 o'clock, depending on the day, you might not leave until 8 or 9 p.m., depending on the showrunner, right? Because even though you're there to help the writers with what they need, you want to stay behind and make sure that the showrunner is also good. You want to make sure everything is covered. Also, you have to be the one locking up the office. So just by default, you're typically the last to leave. Another con is you're basically a runner. So you're doing a lot of errands. You're running around a lot. You're running to get lunch. You're running to get coffee. You're running to pick up stuff. Like, you're just all over the place. And there are going to be some days that are more hectic than others. The good news is that you get a lot of exercise, okay? You're going to be in here running. You sprint. You sprint. But it can be tiring. It can be exhausting. And, I mean, who wants to battle LA traffic? Another con. Depending on where you work, some writers' rooms are better than others, if we're just being honest. I have heard horror stories about people disrespecting their writers' PAs, but I personally have not had that experience. I have dealt with some crazy ass people. That is a different conversation entirely. However, we're not going to get into that today. The pros definitely override the cons, and you really get to learn TV from the ground up. And you build a lot of lasting relationships. So the last thing I want to talk about is how I got my writer's PA job. So if you remember in my last video, I talked about my first job as a Hollywood assistant. And I'll put a link to it in the description box and maybe a link somewhere in the video if I can. Woohoo! Basically, right after that job, I went into being a writer's PA on a scripted show. Now, I wanted to work in scripted television, so being a writer's PA was amazing for me. Like, the transition from unscripted to scripted wasn't that much of a challenge because, to be honest, I used a lot of my transferable skills, the things I had done as an assistant in unscripted, and I just transferred over to scripted. It was a lateral move. Now, how did I actually get the job? It just so happened that the writer's PA on the production was leaving to take another job, and therefore that spot was opening up. Now, finding writer's PA's jobs can be a little difficult because they can be word of mouth, which goes back to my idea of what? networking. You have to network for yourself, and you have to definitely get out there and get out of your comfort zone and meet people. I happen to know someone who was working on the support staff on the show. I slid her my resume real quick and was able to get an interview. It wasn't easy to get this job. Okay. Now, let me tell you, the process of getting the job was challenging as hell. What I didn't talk about in my last video as a Hollywood assistant is I was overwhelmed and busy as hell. I mean, I was working 12-hour days. I was basically doing like 5 jobs in one. I was an assistant, a manager, a coordinator, a producer, a reader, a therapist. I was all of those things in one. And so leaving that job to go interview for another job was damn near impossible. So I remember the day of the interview. There were 50 things going on in the office. 50 things going on in the office. There was so much happening. My interview itself was at 5 o'clock at the end of the day. And if you're not familiar with LA, I was working in West LA and the interview was in Hollywood. So that took during rush hour, 45 minutes to an hour to get there. Now, here's where your perseverance has to come in. Okay, how bad do you want it? Now, at that point in my career, I was exhausted, I was tired, I was overworked, I was overwhelmed, and I was grateful, but I needed to move into the space that I really wanted to be in. And I left at maybe 3:30 that day, 4 o'clock, and I hightailed my ass across town to get to this interview because it was something that was really important to me, and it was something that I had to do for myself. I had a lot of doubts doing that because, I mean, as I said, as an assistant, sometimes you're the one keeping the office together. You're the one making sure everything is getting handled. And like for you to leave for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, it just seems like everything is going to crumble. It's not going to crumble. Take the interview. Go for your dreams. And I went and I got it, and the interview itself was 10 minutes maybe. It was like a breath of fresh air. Like, it was great. It was really great. And I'm really happy that I did that because it really changed the course of my career. So all that to say, bet on yourself. If you want it, go after it and get the job that you want. So that is a brief overview of how to be a writer's PA. If you have specific questions, please let me know in the comments or just shoot me a message because I'm happy to answer them, and I just want to help anybody else on this journey. But yeah, so that's it, guys. Thank you guys for watching. I will talk to you guys later, and remember, if you are trying to live your dream and you're going from home to Hollywood, you got this. Bye.